Hi there, this is the problem frame walkthrough for the Global Virtual Design Sprint. I'll be going over each section individually. If you have any questions outside of this video, you can post a comment, send me an email, or leave me a private message on Slack. Let's get started. In the upper left-hand side is a brief explanation of what problem framing is. I usually recommend getting all your problem framing done by the second week of the month of the GVDS, and to try to complete as much as what you're seeing here offline. Normally, any particular row takes 1 hour to complete, so it's 3 hours total online for the entire problem framing set. But if you do part of it offline, you can narrow that down in half. So let's get started with step 1. How well do we know the challenge? The way this works is you have everyone's avatar from kickoff over here on the left. I'm just using this as an example. In the center part here, there's a sentence that says, I understand the challenge we're taking on as a team. Now what each person is going to do, either online or offline, is to take their avatar that they placed here and they're going to put it in one of these 3 circles. If they're feeling confident that they know the challenge and they understand it very well, they can put their avatar right here on the yes side. If they're kind of uncertain, they have some outstanding questions, or maybe they don't have everything that they need to move forward, they have it in the section. And if they are not confident that they understand the challenge and don't know much about it, or they need a lot more information, then they would stick their avatar in the no section. Now each particular person on the team is going to put their particular icon where it goes. So let's say Nora's pretty confident with the challenge, and so is Iva. She says, yes, I have a good feeling about this. And he goes over to, I need some more, and then Lisa just goes, nope, nopedy nope, I don't know. So you have this kind of spectrum of responses for the challenge. Now on this side, there is a line that says, here's what I need to understand our challenge better. Now this can come from anybody. It doesn't necessarily need to be from just the people that say no, they don't understand the challenge. It can also come from people that do understand the challenge, but they want to understand it better by having a particular dimension of the challenge exposed. So let's give some examples. Let's say if I'm Ashante and I'm thinking about a challenge like the Blue Economy series, for example, I can basically put in here and say, what does blue economy mean? Right? That's probably the one question that she has that she's wondering about. And maybe another thing that she needs to understand the challenge better is, what was the origin of the blue economy? All good answers, right? Or all good questions. Now, some other team members may know the answers to these questions, and that's okay. But what we're trying to ascertain is the individual understanding of the challenge as it stands, so that everyone can kind of get in this and yes area, which would make things a little bit easier going forward into problem framing. So once everyone gets done with putting in what they understand about the challenge better, this is going to be a placeholder for what you're going to do in step 2, and I'll kind of zoom out a little bit here and move into step 2. So in step 2, we're going to basically exploring all of the different stuff around your challenge that you can think of. These could be interviews, reference material, documentation, videos, articles, whatever you think would kind of help answer not only your own questions, but other questions that people have. And you just basically copy and paste those URLs in this space. Now, the space that's provided is fairly small, so if you do have to extend this out, you can push these steps down, or you can put in a different mural altogether. But this is something you could easily do offline. It'd probably take you anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. But you should include everything that may answer your own questions in this space, or somebody else's questions in here. Now, luckily, there's already something in Slack for this challenge, the Blue Economy series, and you can go look at that and you can copy and paste it in here as well. But this space is generally for that need, that purpose, is to put everything you want to understand about the challenge in this space. In step 3, you're going to be putting all the things that you remembered or that you think were significant from the previous step into this first space here. You're going to jot down what you think is the most important factor or figure that you want to take into problem framing and put it in this first white box. These other 2 are supplementary, meaning that you can basically put in other things that you want to remember. They may even be things that your teammates also think are significant to bring forward into problem framing. On the right here are any outstanding questions that you're still wondering about. They don't need to be answered now. They can be referred back later on during problem framing or some other exercise you do in your virtual design sprint. As we move down into the second row, or starting at step 4, we're going to start doing the same thing we did with the challenge, but now we're going to delve into the audience a bit. Again, you would put your names of your teammates here as well as any avatars that you created during your kickoff. And you're going to be doing the exact same thing, moving your avatar over to a colored dot that corresponds to your understanding of the audience that you're designing for. If you're very confident in what you're going to be designing for in terms of your audience, you put your avatar in the yes here. If you're not as confident or very unconfident about who you're going to be designing for in your audience and you want to put your avatar in this no section here. And once you put your understanding, no matter where it may lie in this line, you're going to go over here and put down what you need to have to understand your audience better. This could be reading an article or perhaps doing a user interview, whatever it may be. Kind of put those questions and put those inquiries into these boxes. And if you want to do more or make more, all you have to do is just duplicate this box over. So if you have a lot of questions, you can go ahead and put those down for others to see. Over here in step 5 is where you start to take what you put in step 4 and do a little bit of research. Again, just like your challenge, you're going to go in and find out as much as you can about your users, your customers, your audience that you're intending to serve with this challenge, or the audiences that are part of this challenge, maybe subject matter experts, people in a community, whoever it may be. You're going to go ahead and put that down in this space and copy and paste URLs for others people to read. The team notes section is for anything outstanding that you see in this right-hand side that you want to make a note for, maybe something that answers your question. But this is a place to kind of deposit any sort of thoughts or ideas or perspectives. And you can move these notes all around. They don't need to necessarily put here. You can attach them to an image. You can even change them and make them in a different shape if you want. Whatever you'd like to do, you can go ahead and do that while you're doing your research on the audience. Once you get done with step 5, you move over into step 6, and you start thinking about who you're going to engage with the challenge. Now, based on what you understand of the audience, whether it's cursory understanding of it or somebody who's very familiar with it, depending on what you voted on in step 4, you're going to be putting down here the primary person that you think we're going to be engaging for your challenge, the secondary one, and perhaps a subject matter expert you uncovered or know in your network that you think we could reach out to. Or perhaps one that's not in your network, but you think would be really keen for the team to get some information from. Over here on the right-hand side, there are 2 things that you're going to take forward into problem framing that are going to be valuable. First is, in your own personal circles or your professional network, is there someone you know that can help with this challenge? Someone can give you some perspective, give you some information on what you need to know. Or perhaps it's somebody that you put as a subject matter expert or somebody that you thought was in your audience. No matter who it may be, you want to put either their first name or first and last name, if you're okay with that, into this section for future reference. On the right-hand side are places where you can find your user, customer, and audience. Now, these 2 don't have to be correlated, but this is more for where you're going to go if you want to show them different examples of your work. Maybe these are communities. Maybe these are places online where they're forums, or perhaps they're places where they post a lot of content. It could be on social media. Whatever you feel are places that your team can go to find your audience that you are going to be designing for, perhaps reach out to them and recruit them to see what you're going to be doing in your virtual design sprint or your prototyping experiments. Final series of steps will be done online with your entire team. They're going to be going over the pains and problems that you're trying to address through the challenge that your audiences are dealing with. This first section is basically to put down what you feel those pains and problems are. You can put as many pains and problems as you like, the more the merrier, but think of different audiences and what they go through and document that all here, no matter who you are in the team. It should take about 3 to 5 minutes in Mural to kind of go through all of those. Once you're done, you're going to do something called affinity diagramming, and basically you'll be taking these category cards and thinking about the cards that you put up here, which ones fit into certain categories. So just to say, for example, if there's cookies and there is coffee up here, and then we have muffins, and then we also have orange juice. Down in the category here, you're going to put down a category of, say, sweets. And you're going to look at the ones that are up here and pull down the cards that correlate to this particular category. So I'm just going to drop them down right here under sweets. Now, if they don't line up perfectly, you can basically highlight all of them in Mural. Use this little sub menu here to arrange and just put them all in a column. They should fit quite nicely. And same thing with these. There's 2 drinks cards up here, so I'm going to go ahead and put drinks and just drag down coffee and orange juice. So that's the way this section works, in that if you want to do some infinity diagramming, you're going to put those cards, you're going to put those cards into those columns. Try not to get them too long on the tooth. You want to make them at least, at the most, there should be 10 cards under a category. If they're more than 10 cards, you probably need to break it up into subcategories. But once you get done sorting all the cards that are up here, removing any duplicates, so if 2 or 3 or more people put the same card, you can kind of review those. But once those are all set in these categories here, you're going to vote on 3 problems to focus on. Now, doing a vote is pretty simple in Mural. Up here, if you're a facilitator, you start a voting session and basically choose this. And let's say we're going to go for problems and pains. And usually when you're going to figure out how many number of votes you're going to put per person, there's a simple equation to do. You count the number of cards that people have put here in all these categories, and you take that number and you divide it by the number of people on your team. That should give you a pretty good number in terms of the amount of votes you do. So like, hypothetically, let's say 5, just for the sake of example, and always pick any member of this mural to start the vote. Once you do that, you'll be greeted with a little prompt here by Mural saying you get to click on a card to vote, shift click to remove your vote, and your vote is anonymous. So once you hit begin voting, you'll be able to vote on any of the cards, but not the categories. So you do not want to vote on any of the category cards you see here, just on these. Now, usually it's good practice when you're doing affinity diagramming in Mural to basically click on one card for one vote. You can stack them, so I can click multiple times on coffee, thinking that's the most important drink. But that's going to kind of skew the results when you see them on the next page. Instead, when you're doing votes, you kind of want to put just one vote for one card when you're picking out the most important problems and pains that you want the team to focus on. So let's say I think muffins and coffee are probably the ones that we should focus on. Once I'm done voting, the facilitator will basically end the voting session, and when they do, you'll see the results right here. So this is just me voting, but there'll be a number of cards up here that say like 5 unique voters, and this had 6 votes, or maybe this is like 8 votes, and then there's 8 unique voters. But you'll take note of which cards have the most votes, get out of the summary that you see, go back into here, and you can see the votes are still kind of there, and highlight the ones that got the most votes. So you can make this white if you want. Some people like to go colors, so we'll make it yellow. Let's say hypothetically that you had 4 cards that all had the same amount of votes. So there's a little tool that we've used in the Global Virtual Design Sprint, and the easy way to do this is just basically take all of your cards that have a majority of votes, drag them down here, and again, you can use the arrange tool and just put it in a row. You put them right above here, and one at a time, you're going to put these cards right above the word importance. And we're going to start with Coke, put it right there. Now, the other team members that you have when they're in Mural, you can see their cursors, so you can kind of see them moving around. So what you're going to ask, as if you're the facilitator, is, okay, where on this importance line do you think Coke should go? Is it more important to us or less? Basically, you move your mouse either on more or less, and depending on where everyone puts their mouse on this line, the facilitator will move the card either this way, to the right, or move it to the left, and place it somewhere where it's an average of all the arrows that they see. But let's say we go through the motions, go coffee here, everybody thinks that, yeah, this is definitely more important, go to water, this is super important over here, so this kind of goes on top. And then muffins are kind of meh, they're kind of in between, but we now have a top 3 that we can work with. And that's a really quick way of showing you how to use the importance bar down here. Move up to step 8, so we have our top 3 problems listed here, and what we're going to do is think about constraints. So the top problem with water, in terms of like a known constraint, let's say 2/3 of the world's water is too salty. Another known constraint could be that water is very expensive to buy. You can't find water in the desert. But this is an example of constraints that you can basically put in and relate to your problem. And the reason why we're putting this here is because when we start solutioning or thinking of different ideas, we're going to be looking at these constraints to say, okay, what can we actually create as a solution that can work within these constraints? So once you've taken time to record constraints for all 3 of your problems, you'll have a better idea of where you can ideate and solution later on down the road. It'll also give you an idea of how difficult a particular problem may be to address. The final step of this problem framing exercise involves you writing your own problem statement that summarizes your understanding of the challenge, your audience, and where you think the team should go from here. It's worth noting that this particular step can be done offline or online, depending on how much time your team has after doing step 7 and step 8. If you run out of time, these problem statements can be constructed quite easily, offline and on everyone's own time. But if you do have time to produce these problem statements, it usually takes about 10 to 15 minutes. What you'll want to do is find a particular swim lane, put your name and your avatar in this space up at the very top, and start with this first section here. This is double-clickable. When you do, you'll be able to write your own words, and you'll be writing out what you think the challenge is all about and why people should care about it. This is going to summarize everything that you've done so far in these problem framing exercises, and it will be from your own point of view. You can also borrow what other people write, but it should be genuine in terms of what you think the challenge is all about. The next section goes into the target audience and the pains and problems they go through, and steps 4 through 6 kind of laid those out. You can go back and refer to those sections to inform and write out what you think should be in this paragraph. And then finally, at the very bottom is a how might we sentence. Basically, it's a question that's open-ended where you explore some possibilities on where things could go from here. It's going to be kind of your summary of the problem statement that you're constructing. It's the overarching question that the team will consider when going to the next stage, which is either prototyping or the virtual design sprint that you'll be taking on. So everyone's going to have a different style on how they construct their problem statement, and that's perfectly fine. The important thing is that everyone gets to have their point of view heard by everyone else on the team. So once these all get written out and everyone is done, you can have each person take about a minute to explain briefly how they see not only the challenge in the audience, but where things can go. And once you do that, you're going to hold a vote, and you want to be able to vote on either the avatar or the name. And what you're doing is a straw poll vote, so it's going to be 1 vote per person. And the purpose for voting is to focus the team on one particular problem statement they can move forward into the virtual design sprint or prototyping effort. Once you have that, it'll give proper direction for everyone on the team to focus on a solution or an idea. And that's it. That's the entire walkthrough for the problem framing exercise. If you do have any questions, do reach out in LinkedIn, Slack, email, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Good luck and have fun doing your problem framing.